Okay, guys, chapter 6 of the Art of War. Empty and full. Master Sun said, first on the battlefield waits for the enemy fresh. Last on the battlefield charges into the fray exhausted. The skillful warrior stirs and is not stirred. He lures his enemy into coming or obstructs him from coming. Exhaust a fresh army, starve a well-fed army. Unsettle a settled enemy. Appear at the place to which he must hasten. Hasten to the place where he least expects you. March hundreds of miles without tiring, by traveling where no enemy is. Be sure of victory by attacking the undefended. Be sure of defense by defending the unattacked. The skillful warrior attacks so that the enemy cannot defend. He defends so that the enemy cannot attack. Oh, subtlety of subtleties without form. Oh, mystery of mysteries without sound. He is master of his enemy's fate. He advances irresistibly, attacking emptiness. He retreats, eluding pursuit, too swift to be overtaken. If I wish to engage, then the enemy, for all his high ramparts and deep moat, cannot avoid the engagement. I attack that which he is obliged to rescue. If I do not wish to engage, I can hold my ground with nothing more than a line drawn around it. The enemy cannot engage me in combat. I distract him in a different direction. His form is visible, but I am formless. I am concentrated. He is divided. I am concentrated into one. He is divided into 10. I am 10 to his one, many against his few. Attack few with many, and my opponent will be weak. The place I intend to attack must not be known. If it is unknown, the enemy will have to reinforce many places. The enemy will reinforce many places, but I shall attack few. By reinforcing his vanguard, he weakens his rear. By reinforcing his rear, he weakens his vanguard. By reinforcing his right flank, he weakens his left. By reinforcing his left, he weakens his right. By reinforcing every part, he weakens every part. Weakness stems from preparing against attack. Strength stems from obliging the enemy to prepare against an attack. If we know the place and the day of the battle, then we can engage even after a march of hundreds of miles. But if neither day nor place is known, then left cannot help right, right cannot help left, vanguard cannot help rear, rear cannot help vanguard. It is still worse if the troops are separated by a dozen miles or even by a mile or two. According to my assessment, the troops of you are many, and that will avail them little in the struggle, so I say victory is still possible. The enemy may be many, but we cannot prevent an engagement. Scrutinize him, know the flaws in his plans. Rouse him, discover the springs of his actions, make his form visible, discover his grounds of death and life. Probe him, know his strengths and weaknesses. The highest skill in forming dispositions is to be without form. Formlessness is proof against the prying of the subtlest spy and the machinations of the wisest brain. Exploit the enemy's dispositions to attain victory. This the common man cannot know. He understands the forms, the dispositions of my victory, but not how I created the forms of victory. Victorious campaigns are unrepeatable. They take form in response to the infinite varieties of circumstance. Military dispositions take form like water. Water shuns the high and hastens to the low. Water shuns the strong and attacks the weak. Water shapes its current from the lie of the land. The warrior shapes his victory from the dynamic of the enemy. War has no constant dynamic. Water has no constant form. Supreme military skill lies in deriving victory from the changing circumstances of the enemy. Among the five elements, there is no one constant supremacy. The four seasons have no mix. The four seasons have no fixed station. There are long days and short. The moon waxes and it wanes. Chapter 6, Empty and Full, with commentary. Empty and Full. Li Quan, the skillful warrior, turns the empty into the full. Du Mu. In war, avoid the full and strong, attack the empty and weak. But first of all, know your own and the enemy's empty and full points, limitations and strengths. Niu and Wang. Empty means fearful, weak, disorderly, hungry, exhausted, few, unprepared. Full means brave, strong, well-ordered, well-nourished, relaxed, many, prepared. Wu Jiulong. Empty means hollow, as when military might is dispersed and vulnerable. Full means solid, as when military might is concentrated and strong. Empty and full are opposites, and yet they evolve into each other as a part of an ongoing process. This chapter explains how, through an understanding and mastery of the relationship between empty and full, the warrior can seize the initiative in the struggle. He stirs and is not stirred. Translator. In Chinese medicine, full, shi, refers to the yang state of energy abundance or repletio, while empty, zu, refers to the yin state of energy exhaustion or inanitas. See Manfred Porkert, Chinese Medicine, New York, 1982, p. 71. Guo Huaruo summarizes the drift of this chapter. 1984, p. 130. Avoiding the full and attacking the empty is a key principle in Master Sun's strategic thinking. He expounds the importance of taking the initiative and of avoiding passivity, of creating the enemy's weakness and of forcing or enticing the enemy troops to disperse and exhaust themselves, while our own troops concentrate their might. Thus we counter exhaustion with a relaxed ease, and as soon as we detect a weak point in the enemy, we respond swiftly and seize the moment to attack while he is unprepared. We gain victory by adapting our actions to those of the enemy. Master Sun said, first on the battlefield waits for the enemy fresh. Jia Lin, he occupies a winning position and waits for the enemy. He is well prepared, his men and horses are relaxed and fresh. Last on the battlefield charges into the fray exhausted. Jia Lin, if on the other hand the enemy occupies an advantageous position, then I should not advance but should withdraw my troops. Seeming not to wish to confront the enemy, he will assume that I have no strategy and will surely attack, and so I end up exhausting the enemy and not myself. If you withdraw your troops, if the enemy occupies an advantageous position, withdraw your troops. The skillful warrior stirs and is not stirred. Du Mu, I stir my enemy to move toward me, while I myself nurture my strength and wait for him. I do not go toward him for fear of exhausting myself. So you stir them up and to not be stirred, so they can also show their hand, their disposition, as you are formless. Zhang Yu, I stir my enemy into combat, and he is empty. I do not engage in combat and remain full. This is the art of empty and full, mine and the enemy's. I stir my enemy into combat. He lures his enemy into coming or obstructs him from coming. Du Yu, go where he is bound to go, attack where he is bound to defend. Defend the crucial passes and passages, and he will not be able to get through. As Master Wang said, a single cat guards the hole, and 10,000 rats dare not come out. A single tiger guards the ford, and 10,000 do not cross. Deer dare, don't cross. Translator. Master Wang seems to have been rather fond of the cat as tactician. See Du Yu's comment toward the end of chapter 1. Exhaust a fresh enemy. Cow, harass him. Starve a well-fed enemy. Cow, cut off his supplies. Unsettle a settled enemy. Cow, attack what he holds dear, go where he must go, and he will have to come to the rescue. Appear at the place to which he must hasten. Hasten to the place where he least expects you. Records of the Grand Historian, chapter 65. The state of Wei attacked the state of Zhao in 34 BC, 354 BC, and laid siege to its capital, Handan. Zhao, hard-pressed, begged for help from the state of Zi. The king of Zi wished to put Sun Bin in command of his troops, but Sun Bin refused in view of the physical mutilation, amputation to the knee he had recently been subjected to. Instead, Tianji was placed in command with Sun Bin as his strategic advisor, traveling in a curtained carriage covered with a canopy within which he contemplated his strategies. Tianji was for going straight to the relief of the besieged city of Handan, but Sun Bin argued with him that just as one does not disentangle a tangled skein of silk by hitting it, so one should not go to the aid of a party embroiled in a fight by joining in the free-for-all oneself. A better course of action would be to avoid obstacles and instead exploit the empty points of weakness. That way the tangle would untangle itself. Now, since Wei was at war with Zhao, its crack troops had been dispatched beyond its own frontiers, and only the old and the frail had been left behind at home. The smartest move would therefore be to march on the Wei capital at Daliang and cut their lines of communication. The Wei army would then be forced to leave Zhao and come to the rescue of its own threatened territory. In one move, not only would the siege of Handan have been lifted, but a severe blow would have been dealt to Wei itself. Tianji followed this plan, and the Wei army withdrew from the siege of Handan. They fought the troops of Zhao at Guiling and suffered a crushing defeat. This stratagem of avoiding the besieged Zhao capital at Handan, and instead attacking the undefended Wei capital at Daliang, is the second of the 36 stratagems attacking Wei to save Zhao. March hundreds of miles without tiring by traveling where no enemy is. Cow, set out in the void, attack emptiness, avoid that which is defended, attack where you are not expected. Be sure of victory by attacking the undefended. Be sure of victory by attacking the undefended. Wang Zi, attack an empty weak point, one where the general is incompetent or the soldiers ineffectual, where the fortifications are not strong or the precautions not strict, where relief will come too late or provisions are too scanty, or where the defenders are at variance among themselves. Zhang Yu, he who was skilled in attack, dashes forth from the topmost heights of the ninefold heaven, see chapter 4, making it impossible for the enemy to guard against him. The places to attack are precisely those that the enemy cannot defend. Be sure of defense by defending the unattacked. Zhang Yu, he who is skilled in defense hides below the ninefold earth, making it impossible for the enemy to estimate his whereabouts. In this way, the places that I shall hold are precisely those that the enemy cannot attack. The skillful warrior attacks so that the enemy cannot defend. He defends so that the enemy cannot attack. Wang Zi, the skillful attacker, waits for the enemy to exhibit a sign of vulnerability and then attacks with all speed. In this way, the enemy cannot defend. The skillful defender ensures that he is never vulnerable. In this way, the enemy can never attack. Giles, an aphorism which puts the whole art of war into a nutshell. Translator. Wu Jiulong, pp. 89-88-89, paraphrases. The skillful attacking force succeeds by making it impossible for the enemy to know where to defend. The skillful defending force succeeds by making it impossible for the enemy to know where to attack. O subtlety of subtleties without form! O mystery of mysteries without sound! He is master of his enemy's fate. Wang Zi, subtle and inscrutable, so he cannot be seen, mysterious and swift, so that no response is possible. That is how he can control the enemy's fate. He, Yang Zi, Master Sun's method of emptying full is indeed subtle and mysterious, and its results are exceedingly great. We cause the enemy to see our strength as weakness and our weakness as strength. We in our turn are able to convert the enemy's strength into weakness, and as for the enemy's weakness, we know it for what it is. So the enemy is not aware of our weaknesses and strength, but we are aware of his. If we wish to attack him, we know that the place he is defending must be a place of strength, and that the place he is not defending is weak. We can then avoid his strong point and attack him where he is frailest. We can go for his throat. We can hone in on his most vulnerable point. We can home in on his most vulnerable point. Thus, when we do attack, he does not know where to defend, and when we defend, he does not know where to attack. All the prodigious permutations of attack and defense arise from this method of emptying full. The skillful warrior is adept at these permutations and can penetrate into the inner recesses of this most subtle of mysteries. Zhang Yu. The techniques of attack and defense are subtle and ingenious. They are mysterious and secret. They are not outwardly visible or audible. It is through them that we can become the masters of our enemy's fate, of his life or death. He advances irresistibly, attacking emptiness. Translator. Like Cook Ding in the Book of Masters Wang, Chapter 3, The Secret of Caring for Life. What I care about is the way, which is more advanced than mere skill. When I first began cutting up oxen, what I saw was the whole ox. After 3 years, I no longer saw the whole ox. And now I approach it with my spirit and don't see it with my eyes. My senses have stopped and my spirit moves at will. I follow the pattern of nature. I strike in the big hollows. I glide my knife through the big joints and go with the nature of the ox. Compare Watson, pp. 50-51. He retreats, eluding pursuit, too swift to be overtaken. He retreats, eluding pursuit, too swift to be overtaken. Zhang Yu. He comes like the wind, he goes like lightning. If I wish to engage, then the enemy, for all his high ramparts and deep moat, cannot avoid the engagement. I attack that which he is obliged to rescue. Mu. Suppose the enemy has invaded my territory. I can cut his supplies and occupy the roads by which he will have to return. If, on the other hand, I am the invader, I may direct my attack against the sovereign himself. If I do not wish to engage, I can hold my ground, with nothing more than a line drawn around it. Jialin. Even though I have constructed neither wall nor ditch, the enemy cannot engage me in combat. I distract him in a different direction. So Li Quan, puzzle him by strange and unusual dispositions, and so make it impossible for him to engage in battle. In the Han Dynasty, 144 BC, General Li Guang, finding his force of 100 cavalry threatened by several thousand Xiongnu horsemen, instead of fleeing, ordered his men to dismount, undo their saddles, turn loose their horses, and lie down on the ground, thereby causing the Xiongnu to suspect an ambush and enabling his own men to return home safely. Mu Zhang Yu. The great general and strategist Zhuge Liang, the sleeping dragon, see introduction. When encamped at Yangping, ordered Wei Yan and other commanders of his to proceed together eastward, while he kept a small force of 10,000 men to defend the city. The opposing general Sima Yi observed that Zhuge Liang had few troops in the city, and that his generals and officers seemed to have lost heart. In point of fact, Zhuge's spirits were high. He deliberately ordered his troops to lay down their banners and silence their drums, and he forbade them to go out. Then he threw open the four gates of the city and set men to sweeping and sprinkling the streets. General Sima suspected an ambush and drew off his army to the northern hills. Subsequently, when he learned the truth of what happened, he felt extremely bitter about it. This is the famous stratagem of the empty city, the 32nd and the 36th stratagems, where it is classified as a stratagem for use in a desperate situation, a deliberate and crafty exploitation of one's own weakness to outwit the enemy. The veracity of the story has been questioned by historians, but it has always been popular with Chinese novelists and dramatists, as it is told in chapter 95 of the Ming Dynasty novel, The Romance of the Three Kingdoms. The wily Zhuge Liang is calmly playing his lute on the battlements in full view of the enemy, a smile on his face, incense burning, with no one except two page boys in attendance. Giles. What Master Sun is advocating here is nothing more nor less than the timely use of the bluff. He would doubtless have been an excellent poker player. His form is visible, but I am formless. I am concentrated. He is divided. Zhang Yu, if the enemy's forms, dispositions, are visible, we can attack as one body, whereas so long as our own forms, dispositions, are kept secret, the enemy will be obliged to divide his forces in order to guard against attack from every quarter. Translator. Any disposition's form is per se a handicap. It bogs you down through loss of dynamism. It It concretizes and so reduces possibilities. It concretizes, like concrete, it concretizes and so reduces possibilities. By acquiring a form, the enemy becomes numb, while I, by remaining formless, also remain alert and flexible. The enemy is caught downhill of reality. I remain uphill of it and am able to manipulate the situation to my advantage. C. Julian, p. 168. I am concentrated into one, he is divided into 10. I am 10 to his one, many against his few. Attack few with many, and my opponent will be weak. Attack few with my many, and my opponent will be weak. Dumu. I may use light troops and sturdy cavalry to attack him at an empty spot. I may use strong crossbows and archers to seize one of his key positions. I attack him left and right. I surprise him in front and rear. By day I confuse him with flags. By night I confuse him with beacons and drums. So my opponent is filled with fear, divides his forces in order to defend himself. I know his dispositions, but he does not know mine. I am united, he is divided. I am sure of victory. The place I intend to attack must not be known. If it is unknown, the enemy will have to reinforce many places. The enemy will reinforce many places, but I shall attack few. Giles. General Philip Henry Sheridan, 1831-88, once explained the reason for General Grant's victories by saying that while his opponents were kept fully employed wondering what he was going to do, he was thinking most of what he was going to do himself. Zhang Yu, he will have no idea where my chariots will actually go out to, or where my cavalry will actually come from, or where my infantry will actually proceed to, and therefore he will disperse and divide in order to defend himself everywhere against me. Consequently, his force will be scattered and weakened, and his strength divided and dissipated, and wherever I engage him, I can use a large host against his isolated units. By reinforcing his vanguard, he weakens his rear. By reinforcing his rear, he weakens his vanguard. By reinforcing his right flank, he weakens his left. By reinforcing his left, he weakens his right. By reinforcing every part, he weakens every part. Translator. Giles quotes from Frederick the Great's 1712-86 instructions to his generals. A defensive war is apt to betray us into frequent detachment. Those generals who have had but little experience attempt to protect every point, while those who are better acquainted with their profession, having only the capital object in view, guard against a decisive blow and acquiesce in smaller misfortunes to avoid greater. Acquiesce smaller fortunes to avoid greater. Weakness stems from preparing against attack. Strength stems from obliging the enemy to prepare against an attack. Translator. Giles quotes Colonel Henderson, George Francis Robert Henderson, 1854 through 1903, instructor in tactics, military law, and administration at the Royal Military College, Sandhurst, author of The Science of War, posthumous, 1905. The highest generalship is to compel the enemy to disperse his army, and then to concentrate superior force against each fraction in turn. To disperse his army, and then to concentrate superior force against each fraction in turn. If we know the place and the day of battle, then we engage even after a march of hundreds of miles. The skillful warrior must know where and when a battle will be fought. He must measure the roads to be traveled and fix the date of the encounter. He must divide his army and march in separate columns. Those who are distant start first, those who are closer start later. Thus troops setting out from distances of several hundreds of miles converge at the same time, like a throng converging on a city market. Du Mu. Emperor Wu of Liu Song dynasty, Liu Yu, founding emperor of the short-lived dynasty who disposed of the last emperor of the previous Jin dynasty and reigned for 2 years until his own death in 422, sent Zhu Lingxi to attack Huo, Zong, and Shu, the western region nowadays known as Sichuan. Last year, said the emperor, Liu Jingwan set out from within the Yangtze toward Wangwu. He returned having failed in his mission. The rebels will normally expect me to come from outside the Yangtze, but will imagine that this time I will try to take them by surprise by attacking from within the river again, in which case they will certainly defend the city of Fuchang with a strong force and guard the roads in the interior. So if I proceed toward Wangwu, I will fall straight into their trap. Instead, I will take the main force outside the Yangtze and take the city of Chengdu, thus distracting the troops toward the region within the river. This is my indirect tactic for controlling the enemy. But the emperor was concerned that this plan of his would become known to the enemy and that the rebels would thereby know his weakness and strength, where his empty and full points were. So he gave General Zhu a sealed letter with instructions to open it only when he had reached White Emperor's city along the Yangtze. Thus, when it set off, the army did not know where or how it was going to be divided. When General Zhu reached White Emperor's city, he opened the letter and read, "The main force is to take the city of Chengdu from outside the river. Zhang Si and Zhu Lin will take the Guanghan from the central river road. The weakest troops will be dispatched from within the river on 10 tall boats toward Huangwu." Sure enough, Qiu Zong was defending the region within the river with a strong force, and General Zhu destroyed him. Giles. What Masterson evidently has in mind is that nice calculation of distances and that masterly employment of strategy which enable a general to divide his army for the purpose of a long and rapid march, and afterwards to effect a junction at precisely the right spot and the right hour in order to confront the enemy in overwhelming strength. Among many such successful junctions which military history records, one of the most dramatic and decisive was the appearance of Blucher just at the critical moment on the fields of Waterloo. But if neither day nor place is known, then left cannot help right, right cannot help left, vanguard cannot help rear, rear cannot help vanguard. It is still worse if the troops are separated by a dozen miles or even by a mile or two. Zhang Yu. If we do not know the place where our enemy plans to assemble his forces or the day on which they will join battle, our unity will be dissipated through our preparations for defense, and the positions we hold will be insecure. Then if we suddenly encounter a powerful enemy, we shall engage battle in a flurried condition, and no mutual support will be possible among wings, vanguard, or rear, especially if there is any great distance between the front and rear divisions of the army. Giles. The mental picture we are required to draw is probably that of an army advancing towards a given rendezvous in separate columns, each of which has orders to be there on a fixed date. If the general allows the various detachments to proceed at haphazard, without precise instructions as to the time and place of meeting, the enemy will be able to annihilate the army in detail. Translator. More than one modern commentator has observed that one of the best recent examples of this, letting neither day nor place be known, was the Normandy landings, whose success was due in no small part to the fact that the Germans knew neither the day nor the place. According to my assessment, the troops of you are many, but that will avail them little in the struggle, so I say victory is still possible. Giles. Master Sun was in the service of the ancient state of Wu. The state of Yu coincided roughly with the present province of Zhejiang. Alas for these brave words. The long feud between the two states ended in 473 BC with the total defeat of Wu by Gu Jian and its incorporation into Gu's kingdom of Yu. The enemy may be many, but we can prevent an engagement. Jian Lin. The enemy may be many in number, but if he does not know our military circumstances, we can always keep him busy with his own preparations, so that he has no time to plan for an engagement. Zhang Yu. Divide them and dissipate their strength, so that they cannot assemble their force in advance. Then how can they possibly engage us? Scrutinize him, know the flaws in his plans, rouse him, discover the springs of his actions. Zhang Yu. Eventually, by noting the enemy's joy or anger, we can conclude what his policy is. Zhuge Liang did this by sending the insulting present of a woman's headdress to the enemy general Sima Yi, but Sima, despite his anger, still refused to engage battle because his emperor commanded him to stand firm. See the Three Kingdoms, chapter 103 through 4. Make his form visible, discover his grounds of death and life. Probe him, know his strengths and weaknesses. The highest skill in forming dispositions is to be without form. Formlessness is proof against the prying of the subtlest spy and the machinations of the wisest brain. The Book of Masters Wang, chapter 6, the great and venerable teacher. The way has its reality and its signs, but has neither action nor form. You can hand it down, but you cannot receive it. You can get it, but you cannot see it. Compare Watson, p. 81. Exploit the enemy's dispositions to attain victory. This the common man cannot know. He understands the forms, the dispositions of my victory, but not how I created the forms of victory. Giles. Everybody can see superficially how a battle was won. What they cannot see is a long series of plans and combinations which has preceded the battle. Translator Jian Levy, p. 195, points out that the Taoist Book of Master Huainan, ca. 140 BC, returns again and again to this underlying paradox, that the supreme form of military forms or dispositions is to present no form. Victorious campaigns are unrepeatable. They take form in response to the infinite varieties of circumstance. Wang Zi. There was only one basic principle underlying victory, but the forms and dispositions leading to it are infinite. Translator. Compare Wang Zi's comment with Giles' quotation from Colonel Henderson's The Science of War. The rules of strategy are few and simple. They may be learned in a week, but such knowledge will no more teach a man to lead an army like Napoleon than a knowledge of grammar will teach him to write like Gibbon. Military dispositions take form like water. Water shuns the high and hastens to the low. The Way in Its Power, chapter 8. The highest excellence is like water. Water profits the whole of creation, but it never contends. The Way in Its Power, chapter 78. Nothing in the world is as soft and yielding as water, but when it attacks something hard, nothing can surpass it. But when it attacks something hard, nothing can surpass it. Nothing in the world is as soft and yielding as water. Translator Jian Levy, p. 196, draws attention to the way in which Master Sun defends a feminine conception of war, the strength inherent in weakness. He echoes the Way in Its Power in showing that war is not a matter of force and heroism, but of ruse and humility. War shuns the strong and attacks the weak. Guiles, like water, it takes the line of least resistance. Translator. It is frequently remarked that the secret of the Viet Cong's success was their mastery of this maxim, and Mao and his forces had almost uncanny ability to determine points of nationalist weakness, which permitted them to exploit these qualities and led inevitably to an accelerating disintegration of the nationalist position. Griffith, p. 55. War shuns the strong, so you avoid the strong and attack the weak. Water shapes its current from the lie of the land. The warrior shapes his victory from the dynamic of the enemy. Li Quan. How else but from the enemy's dynamic can I fashion victory? Du Mu. From the enemy's emptiness, weakness. War has no constant dynamic. Mei Yao Chin. Its energy evolves in response to the enemy. Water has no constant form. Mei Yao Chin. Its form evolves from the land. Translator. Of itself, water has no form. It is constantly conforming. It evolves through adaptation. It is because it always adapts that it always progresses. In the same way, it is only by adapting to the enemy situation that I can triumph. The enemy situation is for me as the lie of the land is for water. I mold myself upon the enemy situation. I espouse him rather than thwarting him. I never stiffen into any form, but instead I conform. As a result, victory is irresistible, irreversible, like water in its course, never going astray, always flowing downward, without a moment's hesitation. Translated from Julian P. 205, who is skillfully restating the Chinese commentators, as he so often does. Supreme military skill lies in deriving victory from the changing circumstances of the enemy. Du Mu. In war, the potential energy emerges from the enemy's circumstances. It does not depend on us, so it is not constant. It is like water which takes its form from the land. The form does not lie on the water. It is not a constant. By responding to the downward slope of the land, water can carry boulders downstream. By responding to the enemy's circumstances, the warrior is able to change and adapt to a supreme degree. Among the five elements, there is no one constant supremacy. Among the five elements, there is no one constant supremacy. As Wu Jiu Long, 1990 p. 105 comments, the ancient Chinese considered these five elements or phrases, earth, water, fire, metal, and wood, to be the basis of the organization of all matter. According to the five element school of the Warring States period, they produce one and another and control one another. What Master Sun is saying is that the permutations involved in this complex natural process are as subtle and unfathomable as those involved in the field of military strategy. The four seasons have no fixed station. Wang Zi. They revolve, one taking the place of the other. There are long days and short. The moon waxes and it wanes. Wang Zi. Like the changes, the perpetually shifting and flexible improvisations of the warrior adept, there is no single, unchanging way. It's the end of chapter 6. Empty and full.